Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Okay, welcome to another edition of Small Business Banter. Really pleased to have in today with us Martin Ginnane from Ginnane Associates. Martin will tell you a lot more about what he's done in a few minutes, but I just wanted to cover off some of the highlights. He's principally responsible for advising on retail development, placemaking and brand activation. He's done a lot of work in both big cities and regional areas. He's a member of the Small Business Ministerial Council, and he's really a retail industry specialist for the here in Victoria. And prior to that, was Deputy Managing Director of Downtown Duty Free. So, firstly, welcome in today, Martin.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And for today's discussion with Martin, we're going to be talking about regional renewal, making the most of retail, attracting investment, and lessons learned from some of the major initiatives Martin was involved in Melbourne and is now, has been working with regional Victorian locations, Camperdown, Warrnambool, Ballarat. So we're looking forward to that. But Martin, if you could just give us a couple of minutes on your background to so the listeners are in sync with where you come from and what you do. Over to you.
Thank you, Michael. I'm fortunate enough to have had a very relatively varied background, but all around the retail sector. Born in Melbourne many years ago, raised in Melbourne, spent 20 years in Sydney where I started my retail career with companies such as Angus & Coote, the jewellers, Diamond Traders, which was part of then of the Hooker Corporation, owned by the illustrious George Herskew. Then was poached to join Downtown Duty Free in the days when Duty Free was a big business. We had Melbourne Airport, Brisbane Airport, Sydney Airport, and about 15 off-airport stores. So we had about 6,000 staff in those days. And I joined there as Deputy Managing Director. And after 6 years, we were taken over by a Swiss Air company. I was retrenched and thought, well, I'll come back home to Melbourne. Came back to Melbourne, was appointed as the Victorian government's first retail industry specialist at a time when Melbourne in particular had vacancy rates as high as 17, 18%. I was appointed under the Kennett government for 12 months and ended up staying there for 17 years. And during that period, I worked mainly on investment attraction for the CBD, an original advisor on the Melbourne Fashion Festival for the state government up until I departed 10 years ago to establish my own business, Ginnane Associates.
Excellent. So from that background, you know a lot about foot traffic.
Most definitely.
And so looking forward to exploring the work that you've been doing. I mean, drawing on that rich experience, but also relating it to what you've been doing in some of the regional parts of Victoria. So I just wanted to start off with a quote from your website. Global cities of significance all have one thing in common: a strong and vibrant, culturally diverse heart that encourages people to live, experience, participate, and claim ownership of their location. At the heart of these cities is a unique offering that makes them stand out from the sameness that is making so many cities bland and boring. Retail strength, placemaking, and events are the economic backbone of all successful global cities and large residential developments. That's straight from your website. It's very powerful. And I'm going to ask you about how regional towns and regional cities in Australia, can take something from that. I'm assuming it applies across towns as well as cities.
Most definitely, Michael, it does. And look, it's a big statement, and it's a strong statement, and it's one that I'm thinking actually of using on every single presentation that I do, to whether it be commercial, private, government, particularly in this day and age. It came from the fact that a lot of things were happening to the retail sector prior to COVID, and we can all say that COVID's caused it, but there are massive changes happening prior. One of the things that was driving this belief that I have in that statement is that sameness was happening all around the world. So you could walk down Collins Street, you could walk down all the major cities, and they were taken over now by the mega giants, the Louis Vuittons, the Gucci's, the Pradas, who roll out their international branding twice a year. So you can walk down these streets and look in the windows and you'll see the same thing. The only time that you'll notice, if you look up and you'll see St Paul's or St Patrick's Cathedral or Notre Dame, and you'll think, well, I'm not in Melbourne, I'm in Paris. So seriously, that's how bland retail was getting.
Have they taken that McDonald's, consistency of product just a little bit too far with their retail?
Yeah, and I call it mastige rather than prestige.
Nice.
It's got to the point where the big players are having to buy smaller boutique operations now to make themselves unique and so-called exclusive again, because of the success and over success of some of these global brands.
It's almost a commoditization of a once glorious brand.
Exactly. So one of the things then that's come out of this is the desire to experience something that is different and unique. And one of my other sayings is, luxury to me is about, someone says to you, where did you find that, as opposed to where did you buy it? Because you can buy anything these days. If you've got the money, you can buy something at the top, and within 18 months it'll be at H&M, or probably far less than that, or Zara. You can buy the copy of it. But the wonderful discovery, finding something, whether it's a great old book or pre-loved tie or whatever the case may be. So jumping back into your question, this is where retail cities and towns across Australia have the upper hand. It is really their opportunity to shine, and we can discuss that as we go along.
Yeah, look, I'm really, I think we ought to jump straight into that. The renewal, or the potential renewal of the local shopping strip. I mean, you're doing some work in recently, I think, in Ballarat, which is a magnificent, got some magnificent real estate and grand streets, and but what would you take to those places to make that local shopping strip vital and exciting for the locals? And I'm assuming we're not going to have potentially some of those big international luxury brands. So what?
No. And nor do you want them. Michael, what I think is the scenario is that it's going to be driven by two things. You've got to have an appetite by the local government. You've got to have an appetite by the council. For example, I just almost finished 4 years' work with the City of Warrnambool on the redevelopment of Liebig Street. So they had a council at the time who had a vision to say to themselves and their constituents, if we don't do something with this beautiful old big wide street, it is falling into such disrepair that we're losing out to the new shopping centres that are opening and almost circling like a Western movie with the wagon train circling the town
and choking it off.
Now, the scenario with success for any regional town or major strip is to make sure that they're no longer just selling stuff. I use the difference between a product and then I say stuff. This is not being derogatory to any of the brands that are in the shopping centres around regional cities. And those shopping centres do offer convenience. If it's pouring with rain, a young mother can drive in, or a young father can drive in, unload the baby. It's dry. They're not going to get wet. But all they'll find in those shopping centres is stuff. They'll find inexpensive football socks for the kids, which they need because they grow so quickly. They'll find a dress. They might find a cheap, inexpensive set of cabinets or something for their bedroom. That's fine. When they come into Warrnambool, or when they come into Ballarat, or when they come into Camperdown, it's about wanting to come into town because that's where they're going to experience and find things that are different and unique. They're going to be able to engage with the community in a much nicer environment, wider footpaths, planting, better awnings, easier parking. All those things make for an environment that will make regional cities and towns continue to thrive.
Right. And Warrnambool, Ballarat, other regional towns around Australia, a lot of them have, the history is there. But you talked about having local councils being a big part of the equation. They need to support. What about landlords? I mean, some of these buildings are grand and make for beautiful retail or food or whatever, but the older they get, the harder they are to maintain, or the costlier they are to maintain. It's a conundrum.
And you can see examples not just in regional towns. You can see examples on Chapel Street under the Council of Stonington, on Glenferrie Road, in many areas. One of the advantages that large shopping centres have is that every so many years your store must be refurbished. You must meet the guidelines of the shopping centre and so forth. So while that creates a great Disneyland feel and a very, very nice, safe environment and a pleasurable environment, we're almost we are craving something that's a bit more earthy and a bit more real. Warrnambool, and I know the city of Ballarat as well, Warrnambool successfully offered restoration grants for property owners during the redevelopment program. The city of Warrnambool got their funding from federal, state and from their own coffers, so 3 lots of funding. I believe City of Ballarat have done the same for the renewal of the mall. But I believe both cities are offering grants and financial assistance to restore and renew these heritage buildings.
Right. So that assuming the landlord takes advantage, then it does really open up the opportunities for smaller retail operators, whether they be food or whether they're quirky retail to start something.
Michael, the exciting thing is when you walk down the streets of these areas now is that you're seeing young people. You're seeing in Warrnambool there's, I think, 3 whiskey bars, there's a gin bar. And these are all being run by young people who were born and raised in Warrnambool. Evidently, you do need to either be born there or marry somebody. And if you marry somebody, you need to be married for 20 years before you're classed as a true
before you get your stamp, yeah.
Which even though I've been there a lot, I still don't think I'm a local. But they're coming back to town. They're seeing opportunities to come back to their town and make a living for themselves and their families. There's new housing estates being built around in big numbers around these large and medium-sized regional cities. And these people have come in many ways quite often from urban environments, and they still want to live the same way. They want to be able to go out to a whiskey bar, or they want to be able to buy some nice cheese and some nice bread. Yeah.
And on today's edition of Small Business Banter, talking with Martin Ginnane from Ginnane Associates. That's a trend that we talk about all the time on Small Business Banter. The movement back from CBD areas, whether it be Sydney or other states, capitals, and this reinvigoration of towns and those people bringing with them some of their their experiences in there's no question Melbourne has and Sydney and Brisbane and Adelaide have some incredible innovation in food but it seems to be transplanting now in these regional locations. What is that? Is that a result of people just having enough of the city? Being too expensive to run businesses. What are your thoughts on why this is happening?
Michael, you're spot on. But it's a combination of all those things. It's a combination of the perhaps the over success that large cities have had in terms of urbanisation, particularly Melbourne in the last 8 to 10 years. Massive increase of student population, which we see how what the massive contribution they've given to the economy, particularly as they haven't been here for the last 12 months. It's a combination of all those things. People want to not necessarily escape, they just want to experience something, whether they're moving permanently or whether they're visiting. The other thing that's happening, of course, is that the ability. I know someone in particular who's going to be working from Ballarat, stay in Ballarat, but be working for a Melbourne firm, and they only need to go to Melbourne now twice a week.
Yeah.
So all that flexibility is something 5 years ago we didn't have.
Yeah, there's some glory. I think you made a comment earlier about not what you bought, where you bought it, or where you found it. Yeah, and you walk down. I live in down the Bellarine Peninsula. My office is in Queenscliff, and it's this. I don't know.
What a life you've got.
Well, it's fascinating every day to walk through that street, and what it might be, and I see it. The gin bars and the distilleries, not so much in in Queenscliff right at the minute, but certainly in other places it's booming, and
yes.
It's a combination of that vigor and energy, and if you were to take a view of what the next town that wants to reinvigorate their retail strip, their historical retail strip, what are the key? Like we've talked about support to restore buildings. I guess we need landlords to come on board with buy into the vision. Who else? And the small business operators. What else or who else is needed to really kickstart getting these places? Because people are travelling more and more through regional Australia because you can't go elsewhere. So the opportunities would seem to be there if you've got an interesting offer.
The council, the LGA, the local government authority, has to have the passion, and the councillors, the CEO, has to have a dream of what that town could be. In many eyes, retail doesn't play a part. Retail services, hospitality don't really play a part in local government plans. They may have a 4-year strategy for economic development, but retail and services doesn't normally play a big part in it. So in order for what you've just said, those the other players, the landlords, the small business operators, the potential investors, you have to know that you're moving into an area, or considering to move into an area, where a council is hungry for your business and is keen to get it. I'm just about to deliver an investment attraction 2-day opportunity in Warrnambool, where we're inviting some of the big commercial real estate agents down to have a look at what the area has to offer, how it's grown, how it's changed. Not necessarily to get any big players down, but for them to be able to put Warrnambool in their head for property investors, but also for businesses that might be looking to expand.
So you're saying that retail and retail services aren't really a driver for the LGAs? Is that so? They're
not. I'm not saying that with all of them, but with a lot of them, it's very much when I started originally with the state government, which was over 20 years ago. I remember having a director say to me, "But Martin, why are we even playing in this space? One shop closes, another shop opens." And it's not as simple as that. It's a scenario where council needs to lead the way in a vision of what they want the city to be. And when I say retail, I'm not necessarily just talking about selling more stuff. A good regional town and a good regional city should attract people. It should attract its own people. It should attract visitors, but it should attract them for a multitude of reasons. And retail, food, beverage is one of the biggest drivers in today's market.
Absolutely, it is, and it's certainly an area for further discussion. But if you look around, I spend a lot of time traveling in regional Victoria, and I go a long way for a good bakery,
exactly,
a good beer, a good pizza,
yep.
And what are the components for a good contemporary retail strip? Do you think in any given town? Like what must you have to get people to kind of choose that town over another town?
You have to have two things. You have to have a business model that appeals to the locals, and you also have to have a business model that will appeal to the visitors. Now, I spent a lot of time as a young boy, which was a long time ago, in Dalesford and Hepburn Springs, and I remember how it was, and I see how it is now. However, for all the success, Dalesford in particular is still very much a weekend economy,
right? Yeah.
Because it's driven by everything that appeals to the tourist. You must maintain an offering that appeals to your local residents as well. So you need, as you just said, a good pizza joint, which Warrnambool has about 2 and Ballarat has about 6. You need a really good bottle shop. You need a couple of good pubs. You need a pub that has good live music. You need a good delicatessen. There's one in Warrnambool called Darwell Farms in the main street there that a woman by the name of Lisa runs. It's the most amazing business. It's got absolutely everything. And
I think they also tried some stores in the city, didn't they? In Melbourne.
They had one in Geelong and they had one in Albert Park, I think, but I think they're both gone. Lisa's got bought out her own business now. But it's that sort of business where you just go there. It's almost like a small IKEA for food and delicatessen. You just go in, you pick up a basket, and you buy.
Yeah, yeah.
So the other thing is too, these towns need to, as they get to grow, need to have the services as well. So there's a good banking infrastructure. There's 2 insurance brokers. There's things like that help the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and those communities, I would think, across the board are growing. So you've got a bigger and more permanent base to build a business around. And this idea of investment attraction it's still a viable model for local government to think about, local councils. It's not just for big cities.
It's essential because big cities have been so badly hurt over the big cities that have relied particularly on government employees in a big way, and international students. I think of Victoria, a wonderful campaign they had many years ago with the jigsaw puzzle, and the poor CBD of Melbourne, which I'm actively involved on, working on their precincts review work at the moment. But the pieces of that jigsaw puzzle have fallen out. So the students have fallen off the table. The tourists have fallen off the table. The public servants aren't in town. Yep.
Mm. Yeah, no, I get it. I wanted to, in that investment attraction, I just wanted to get your thoughts quickly on there's quite a difference between attracting big employers and also versus attracting new business operators. And, I'm very passionate about seeing more small business owners. And so that it's a balance between, getting a bigger organisations who can employ 20, 50, 100 people, but also I think sometimes the opportunities to attract new and innovative small business operators. We had Carly Fleckno from Made the Grampians Way. She classic tree changer and involved in this is maybe 30 episodes back, but that's the kind of energy and vigour that I think we need. As well as obviously attracting, not everyone wants to be a business owner, but, so we need to have a balance. But I sometimes wonder whether small business might get underappreciated as an employment generator.
They certainly never get underappreciated if I'm involved in anything, Michael, because I've been in small business in different ways on and off for so many years, and I know the difficulties of it, but I am so passionate in believing that this is their time to rise. It really, really is their time to rise. They've got access to so much now in terms of they don't need to pay big advertising. They've got Instagram. They've got everything at their fingertips to grow their business.
Yeah, they've got something that's interesting, quirky.
Exactly.
New. They can get people to the destination.
Exactly.
Build it and they will come. Maybe that's going to come true for some.
Well, that's why we're doing the investment attraction work. It's not certainly not to, when under no idea that we'll attract big brands, but it's about putting the brand, the city of Warrnambool and other cities in investors' minds.
Yeah, and really building on the natural advantage, the heritage, the proximity to food, beverage, produce. So it's
a wonderful life.
And a wonderful life. Yeah. Hey, Martin, that is unfortunately time up for us today, but it was a really great chat. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your energy and passion for that reinvigoration and renewal. It's keep up the great work, and perhaps we'll chat another time. But go Excellent. Well.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Martin Ginnane. So that is all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources, or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.